Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yep.
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Where'd you get those shoes? Easy. They're from DSW. Because DSW has the exact right shoes for whatever you're into right now. You know, like the sneakers that make office hours feel like happy hour. The boots that turn grocery aisles into runways. And all the styles that show off the many sides of you, from daydreamer to multitasker and everything in between. Because you do it all in really great shoes. Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store or dsw.com.
It's time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers web zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
What's up, faithful? You're listening to another episode of the 49ers web zone, No Huddle Podcast, a part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Brian Renick. He's Al Sacco. And mercifully, the 49ers season has ended with their seventh loss in their last 8 games to the Arizona Cardinals. It was an ugly game. It was an ugly season. It's over. I don't know about you, but I'm genuinely glad that this 49er season is over. And it should be a very, very eventful offseason.
This was a rough season. I think a lot of the fan base coming into this year was, they felt it coming in after the Super Bowl losses and how close the Niners had gotten. We could see it in the offseason. People were, if you want to call it exhausted or whatever you want to call it.
Burnt
and
out.
we even saw it this year. I think there was some excitement at the beginning of the season, even with everything that happened with the contracts. Still, it's a new season and the team was supposed to be good. And as it went on, you just saw it with the fan base. It was just, it's taken its toll on the fan base. I was thinking about sort of what's happened with this team. Well, let's just say the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So last 10 years, you're talking 2015 to 2024, and there's been a lot of success in those years.
Yeah.
There's also been a lot of rough seasons. So just in those 10 years, Brian, the Niners have a record of 77 and 87. Okay. They have 6 10-loss seasons, 3 6 10-plus loss seasons, 3 12-plus win seasons. They've appeared in 4 NFC championship games, 2 Super Bowls, and they've had 11 different QBs start a game. Now, I put that out there. I put that out there on Twitter, and a lot of people understand, that's been a roller coaster ride. And then you get the whack jobs who are like, what do you mean? I wouldn't trade us with anybody. Come on. It's been a lot. It's been exhausting. It's been a roller coaster ride. That doesn't mean it's all bad. It's not all bad. There's been a lot of great times the last 10 years. But to be that successful and still have 6 10-loss seasons is kind of insane for me. So when you look at it, the Niners lost 11 games this year. They were 1-5 in the division. This is the 11th time in franchise history they've lost 11 plus games. 1963, 1978, 1979, 1999. Okay. And then in the 2000s, they've done it 7 times: 2004, 2005, 2007, 2015, 2016, 2018, and 2024. That's rough. That's a lot of 11 loss seasons in the 2000s. And despite the success that they've had, the Niners have had 10 plus loss seasons in 6 of the last 10 years. They had 10 plus loss seasons 6 times from 1981 through 2014. So just 6 times in the prior 35 years. And they've done it 6 times in the last 10. So you've had the success, but you've also been through these seasons that are exhausting. And you're like, holy shit, man, 11 losses sucks. If you lose 11 games, you suck. You're a bad
and what's
team.
what's wild is, again, they lost 7 of their last 8. They were 5-4 after beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are, a division winner and might be, I think they're favored against the Commanders. I'm not positive. That's gonna be a good game,
I don't know.
think, but
not sure.
But they were 5-4 after beating, after beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then, like I said, they lost 7 of their last 8. And it was just it just felt at a certain point like this team just knew this isn't it. And I mean, even even yesterday, like you got 300 and some odd yards from Josh Dobbs. And I know he threw one real bad interception, the interception that bounced off Pearsall's hands. I mean, that was a bad throw, but it wasn't necessarily, those are hard to give to the quarterback, but it just and the defense just looked like dog shit again. And the special teams was a disaster like it has been all season. And it was just, there were just glimpses of who this team could be. And then the reality of what this team was this season always creeped in those last 8 games, right? Like the glimpse of what they could have been against the Lions, and then it falls apart and you're like, oh, that's right, this is the 2024 49ers. And it was just, it was just and it was, I don't know, it was just a season that by the end of it, I was like I said, I'm just glad it's over. Like I found no joy. There was zero joy to be found in this 49er season. Silver linings, but not once this season was I like, damn, I'm glad I'm a 49er fan.
This last game, I usually watch the Niners games. Again, if you listen to the show, I watch a lot of football. I mean, I try to watch every game if I can.
Yeah.
Niners games feel like they go by in 45 minutes to me. Typically, they just go by really fast. I look up and I'm like, oh my God, it's halfway through the second quarter already. I'm just, whether you're enjoying it or into it or whatever it is, they feel like they go by really fast. This last game of the season felt like it was 6 hours. Looking up and I'm like, oh my God, it's only halfway through the third quarter. It was so painful to watch, especially when, Kittle's out of the game and they start to do that, pull some guys. It was just terrible. I actually put money on them, which I lost, obviously, just to make it a little bit more interesting and all the more frustrating that they just didn't seem at some point like they gave a shit, especially on defense. The defensive stats, I didn't know how bad they were until I looked them up yesterday and into today, kind of thinking what I was going to talk about in the show. The defensive ranks in 2024, EPA 26th, points allowed 29th. They were 29th in the league in points allowed. They gave up 436 points. I think the Titans, the Panthers, and the Cowboys might have been the 3 that gave up more than them. Turnovers, 20th in the league, and they only had 2 turnovers over the last 8 games or whatever it was. Rushing TDs allowed, 31st. Sacks, 23rd. Pressure percentage, 24th. So listen to this. And this is where it gets a little dicey to me versus what they did last year and sort of how they approached this defense. Last season, they gave up 20 points or less during the regular season 11 times. 11 out of 17 games. They gave up 20 points or less this season just 4 times. To the Jets, the Patriots, the Bears, and the Rams on a gross Thursday night game. So every week, pretty much, this defense is giving up points. And I don't care what some of their stats said they look good or that they were pretty good. I know their pass defense statistically it was pretty decent. This was not a good defense. And the personnel decisions that they made, none of them worked out. They tried to revamp a lot of things in the offseason. Gross Matos, Collins, Floyd, Elliott, Devondre Campbell, which is probably the worst of it all, Isaac Yiadom. None of them worked out. Jair Brown, starting safety, didn't work out. The stuff did not work out. So they're going into the offseason. I guess as we maybe shift to now, where do they go from here? First thing they need to do is have a serious talk because they should be embarrassed about what happened on the defensive side of the ball last half of the season.
I agree. You know what's wild though? Like you said, they were 29th in points allowed, but they were 8th in yards allowed. That's crazy to me.
It is crazy.
They were 8th. Like they didn't give up a ton of yards. The only teams that gave up less yards than the 49ers were the Eagles, Titans, Jets, Dolphins, Packers, Texans, and Broncos.
Well, 32nd ranked special teams group would do that to you too when you have short fields and everything else. So,
and then the other thing that I think is embarrassing, I saw our friend John Chapman tweet this out after the game. The 49ers defense allowed teams to score in the fourth quarter in every game this season. Last year, they shut out teams in the fourth quarter 11 times. That's brutal. That's brutal.
And they gave up 29 plus points. I think it was in 5 of their last 7 games. I think that's what it was. And they got 87 points over the last 2 weeks. That's a defense that you're just packing it in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Lions scored 40 on you. Okay.
Right.
The Lions, I guess you
right.
give yourself a pass. But this Cardinals team,
without
47
James Conner.
points. Right. Without the linchpin for their offense, James Conner, 47 points. Kyler Murray was not letting up this season by any stretch of the imagination. They did whatever they wanted to. It was pathetic. I just, the way the season happened, and were injuries a part of it? Absolutely. It played a part, but injuries don't have anything to do with penalties, with how undisciplined you were, with the special teams issues that happened every single week, whether it's a return or a missed kick or whatever it was. How many fake punts did people get on the teams get on the 49ers this year? They're like, all right, Niners aren't going to know this is coming. Let's run another fake punt on the team. All those things have nothing to do with injuries. They were an undisciplined, sloppy, bad team. How many offensive drives got derailed because of a holding call or somebody illegal shift or whatever it was on offense? Over and over and over and over again. They were a poorly coached team. They did a bad job with personnel decisions. And what you have is a 6-11 record. You're an 11-loss team. And you know what? They weren't an 11-loss team this year. They were every bit of an 11-loss team.
So it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? How am I going to build something for myself? But where do I start? Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and here's how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. The best time to start your new business is right now. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates, no coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts and help you sell everywhere people scroll. What happens if you don't act now? Will you regret it? What if someone beats you to the idea? Don't kick yourself when you hear this again in a year because you didn't do anything now. With Shopify, your first sale is closer than you think. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
When it comes to hiring, don't search for great talent. Match with them, thanks to Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Just go to Indeed.com/radio right now, and listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Go to Indeed.com/radio and tell them you heard about them from this podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Ready to level up? Chumba Casino is your playbook to fun. It's free to play with no purchase necessary. Enjoy hundreds of casino-style games like bingo, slots, and solitaire anytime, anywhere. With fresh releases every week. Whether you're at home or on the go, let Chumba Casino bring the excitement to you. Plus, get free daily login bonuses and a free welcome bonus. Join now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Play Chumba Casino today. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. T&Cs apply.
I know fans probably expected news on Brian Schneider and Nick Sorensen. Schneider being the special teams coordinator, Nick Sorensen being the defensive coordinator. I think they probably expected news about them being let go already today. It seems like I don't know how you can bring Brian Schneider back. There's no way that Brian Schneider is coming back. Nick Sorensen, I don't think he should come back just because of the amount of talent available to bring in at defensive coordinator. You're talking about Lou Anarumo, who lost his job with the Bengals, Dennis Allen, Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich. There's another one out there that I'm right, but there's a lot of talent available. And again, you're in an advantageous position in that you can make those changes quickly, and you probably should, because there are how many head coaching vacancies are there right now? There is the Bears, the Jaguars. Doug Peterson got fired. The
Jets, Saints,
the Jets. Well, the Saints not yet, right? They haven't made a decision on Darren Rizzi, which to me,
the Riz might be back.
And apparently he's very much like Antonio Pierce last year with the Raiders. The players love him, and it seems like they're rallying behind him. If he doesn't get retained, I think that's the first person you call to replace Brian Schneider. But there are some talented defensive play callers available to you, but there's also a handful of head coaching openings where guys are going to try and bring in, a trusted defensive, if you're Ben Johnson, you got to bring in, a guy that you can just hand the defense over to. All those guys that I named are guys like that. So if you are making a change, and you should, there's Nick Sorensen did nothing to warrant bringing him back. You got to make that decision soon. And so it's surprising to me that they haven't, but there's, to me, you cannot go into next season with either one of those coordinators still in their position. And arguably probably Brandon Staley should likely be gone as well. Because you know what Brandon Staley was in charge of? It was the
turnovers,
same thing
right?
that turnovers. You know how many they had since the bye? 2. Like,
ridiculous. Yeah, none in their last 7 games. Well, exactly. I think Patriots is the other opening. I think we got them all. But yeah, and your point is well taken, because you look at last year. Okay, they wanted to get rid of Wilkes. They felt like it wasn't working out, and they're doing it after the Super Bowl. So there's slim pickings, right? And they're looking at really pipe dreams. Spagnuolo wasn't coming there. Belichick wasn't coming there. They tried to get Ulbrich from the Jets. Wasn't happening. So they end up with Sorensen. Did they settle? I mean, probably. Yes. But again, it's timing, right? So this season, like you said, there are legit names out there that you need to approach now. And I think you hit on the main 3. Ulbrich's time as a head coach scared me. Although, again, you had brought up the point last night, like you can't take away what he does as a defensive coordinator because he's not a head coach. Doesn't mean he was a bad defensive coordinator. And the Niners already had interest in him there. So he's a guy you look at. Salah, obviously, he's somebody you put a call into who's consulting with Green Bay. And Anarumo, the Bengals had a tough season, but look, this guy's been a really good defensive coordinator for a really long time.
I really like Lou Anarumo. To me, like that's the home run hire to me, because it, you know what Lou Anarumo has proven as the Bengals defensive coordinator? He can stop the Chiefs. Like, honestly, I'm like, sign me up, right? Like, and I know, there's more to it than that, but it wasn't scheme that sunk Anarumo and his defense in Cincinnati. It's the lack of talent on that side of the ball. When they had talent on that side of the ball for one season, they had the 6th ranked defense in the NFL, right? And then since then, they just don't invest in that side of the ball. And there's just only so much, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And there's already more talent on the defensive side of the ball in San Francisco than there has been in Cincinnati since Lou has been there. So to me, that is a home run. And not only that, it's bringing in a different voice, right? And it just seems like perhaps they've got to start finding some adjustments, some switching things up. Maybe the wide 9 is not what they need to be using anymore, right? Even though Chris Kasurik is, he majors in that, I still think he would be a valuable defensive line coach, even if you're not implementing the wide 9 scheme, because like I said, it certainly seems like teams have kind of figured that out. And I just think you need something new, right? And Saleh is proven, and if you bring him in, the players are going to love him. They're going to play hard for him. I think Ulbrich runs the same thing. Like, so I just don't know how much Kyle Shanahan wants to get away from that, but I don't know. It just seems like some significant changes. And it felt like they were trying to do that when they interviewed the guy from the Chiefs, right? Tried to get Spagnuolo, and it's like, well, you can't. I'm not leaving here, and rightfully so. But it just seems like you need some fresh blood in there. And Lou Anarumo, Jeff Ulbrich, maybe Robert Saleh, I don't know. These are also all guys, Dennis Allen probably. These are all guys that likely you don't have to worry about losing again, right? Like that's another issue in and of itself. Because I think that's one of the big issues with this season is just the brain drain, right? The amount of football knowledge that has left the 49ers over the past 3 seasons by other teams poaching them, their coordinators as head coaches and their assistants as coordinators, right? Like there's been a ton of it. And even the Jets have asked to interview Brian Griese for their opening.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was like, Brian, don't even accept that call. Like don't do that to yourself. But I just, it's time for new ideas to enter the building. And I hope that Kyle Shanahan is open to that.
And I like what the Philly did with Vic Fangio, for example. And, Fangio is obviously a phenomenal defensive coordinator, but they had issues on defense last year, a lot of issues on defense. And they just brought in Fangio and said, here, right? Here you go. Run our defense. And I feel like that's what the Niners need to do too. Like you said, whatever Kyle preferred, maybe he needs to take a look in the mirror and just say, I just need to get a really good coordinator in here and maybe let him kind of run what he wants to. You have some pieces in place. Nick Bosa is Nick Bosa. Fred Warner is Fred Warner. Lenore's a solid corner. We look Mustafa and Green look like his rookies. There is some talent there still. So you just bring somebody like that in and maybe that's the way to go. But Lynch and Shanahan didn't announce when they're, at least not as when we're recording this on Monday, when their end of the year press conference is going to be. Right. That tells me that they're probably talking about some stuff and it's probably coaching staff related. Like you said, Schneider, no way Schneider can come back. None. And Sorensen, I guess they could sell it, but it's a real tough sell after a real hard sell. Yeah. And it wasn't even, I think a month ago, you could have gotten away with it and said, you know what, we had some injuries. He's first year, but after the way the defense just flat out looked like they quit in the last month. And there were things he just didn't have answers for schematically. You can't just say, you know what, Kyle, you got enough clout, you got enough money in the bank to say, all right, I know I admitted that I screwed up with Steve Wilkes because I moved on from him. I obviously screwed up with Nick Sorensen. I know that's 2 in a row. I'm 2 for 2 and then I'm 0 for 2. But I've done enough in the past. I've hired enough good coaches. 3 of my guys are out head coaches right now from this 49ers regime. I'm going to make the move, cut the bait, and get another guy. And there's guys out there to get. And I think that has to happen, at least the firings ASAP this week. 100%.
Yeah. Because like I said, you don't want to get undercut by one of these teams that has a head coach opening that hires their coach. And then that guy says, hey, Robert Saleh, hey, Jeff Ulbrich, like come join me in Chicago. Come join me. Oh, Matt Eberflus is another name that is out there.
Just experienced guys.
Yeah. Allen, Eberflus, Anarumo, Saleh, Ulbrich. Yeah. Like, that's 5 guys where you're like, all of them are worlds better than Nick Sorensen. Yeah. And again, it certainly seems like they're going to do their best to try and run it back one more time, right? With this core, outside of maybe Deebo Samuel. And if that's the case, you can't just hope that he's going to get better in year 2. Like you just can't. Like, if he was lights out in year 1, sure. Like, or at least there were times where you're like, okay, like I can see it. I can see him. Right. But I mean, you look at, they gave up 19, 23, 27, 13, 24, 24, 28, 24, 20, 20, 38, 35, 13, 12, 29, 40, and 47. There wasn't any point where outside of that Rams game where you thought, hey, this and that Bears game, those back-to-back games where you thought, hey, man, these guys look like they've got it back on track. It just doesn't, again, other than that, 13, but that was to the hapless Patriots. And then the only other time it was under 20 was week 1 against the Jets when they gave up 19. So nothing that tells me he should stay.
And our producer Spencer just said Gus Bradley was just fired by the Colts. Not anybody.
Don't bring Gus Bradley in though.
Yeah, please, to God. But another name with a lot of experience who is out there is the point of this. This is 6 guys now with experience that we just named. Now is the time to strike a defensive coordinator. But please, God, not Gus Bradley.
I've been working with a nurse dietitian for the last 6 months, and it's been life-changing. I've lost weight, healed my relationship with food, and have way more energy. Working with a dietitian online to create a personalized nutrition plan was so easy thanks to Nourish. The best part? I pay $0 out of pocket because Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
This episode is brought to you by Unstoppable. Discover the inspiring true story about Anthony Robles, who defied every expectation to become a national wrestling champion in Unstoppable, a new original movie from Amazon MGM Studios and director William Goldenberg, evoking the excitement and camaraderie of classic sports dramas and thrilling wrestling matches. Unstoppable features an all-star ensemble cast, including Jarrell Jerome, Jennifer Lopez, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, and Bobby Cannavale. Unstoppable is streaming exclusively on Prime Video January 16th.
And then looking at this team from there, you get the guy in there, right? So you get Anarumo, just for argument's sake. And now build the defense. You're going to build the defense in his identity. Well, it's a good thing because you got a lot of decisions to make on this defense. And I'm looking at it right now. I think Dre Greenlaw is the big piece in terms of what's going to happen. And I'll explain why I think that. They are a different team when he's on the field. Attitude-wise, performance-wise. He brings a whole other element. And you put him and Warner back there, you get 2 linebackers that are that good. It changes a lot in terms of what other offenses can do. However, a couple things with Greenlaw. One, he came back from a serious injury this year and couldn't stay on the field. Now that could be because, again, maybe he wasn't in football shape. He's favoriting, who knows? And he could come back completely healthy next year. I hope so, but he's a free agent. So what kind of contract is he going to want? What is he going to demand? Can you get him on a short-term incentive-based thing where he comes back and says, okay, sign a year or 2 type thing with a lot of incentives. And then if I'm myself, again, I can get a bigger contract after that. Because if you're the Niners, as much as, again, I think a healthy Dre Greenlaw, he's worth it. If you invest a lot of money in him and he's not himself, or he just can't stay on the field anymore, and we won't know that until next year,
right?
You're going to hurt yourself money-wise. So I think that's the big one. And then other than that, when you look at this defense, regardless whether it's Greenlaw, they have a huge hole at linebacker. I think huge. I think they need to bring it on. And I know people like D Winters, and he's got promise and things like that, but I don't trust him as the answer for a whole season.
But also, like, I like D Winters, but I like D Winters as the 3rd linebacker.
I don't want him being right. Agree, 100%. Safety. Jerry Brown doesn't look like the guy. Hufanga, I don't know if he forgot how to tackle. I don't know if I just didn't notice that he took horrible angles because the other things that he did, but he's not coming back after the performance he's put on. So you need a linebacker, you need a safety. Figuring Mustafa's going to be their starting safety. As much as I would love Charvarius Ward to come back, again, maybe Charvarius Ward was a great free agent signing.
Did you hear his comments in regards to whether he would be back or not?
It made me sad. Yeah, I feel for the guy. I feel for him.
100%.
Yeah. And he's been through hell, and this season is a total loss. You can't. He was hurt. He went through absolute tragedy. You can't look at anything for him this season. Just pray for him and his family, and hope they could find some peace. But you look at what he did as a free agent signing the first 2 years. He was a great free agent signing. He was a freaking 2nd team All-Pro last year. He was phenomenal. Yeah. It was a really good signing. If he can come back again, if you can see what the market is for him, but maybe if you can get him, 1 year prove it deal and see what happens. He's going to be 30. I'd love it. I'd love to have him back.
Yeah, but I basically, when he said, like, the state of California just gives my wife and I PTSD, I'm like, well, then there's no way that
I was so sad.
There's no way that you can come, that you can even think that he'll be back. So
he needs to take care of himself.
In fact, his wife already moved out of California because she couldn't stay.
I didn't know that.
She already moved out. So
yeah, he's got to do what's best for his family. But he's been a great 49er. And if 100%. You ever wanted to come back, I think I'm pretty welcome him back with open arms. But he's got to do what's best for him. Yeah. So you need another corner because right now you have Green and Lenore. Definitely need somebody else. And then to me, you need 3 or 4 defensive linemen. I think you got to revamp the whole defensive line. So whatever defensive coordinator you're bringing in, you're kind of revamping the defense, which is crazy to think, but that's where we are. You probably need a new kicker, right?
Oh my God.
I don't think that's working out. And I've saw some things. It was Lawrence Tynes and
it was Lawrence Tynes.
There was another, maybe Jay Feely chimed in about
Jay Feely. You're right. It's Jay Feely.
Some issues with holds. It's possible. Maybe there was a hold. And if the ball is facing to the left, the ball's going to go to the left. But there's also been issues with Moody too. And I think there's some mental stuff going on there. And the fans have had it. It's probably better just to move on from that. So you need a kicker. And then offensively, I feel like they're going to bring in another running back. I do not resign Aaron Banks. I think they like Ben Barch. I think maybe they like Zakel. I think those guys did an okay job if they want to give them a shot. And that's something the Niners would do at guard. They would say like, oh, we like these guys.
Yeah.
But what do you do at center?
Need a new center.
Finally bite the bullet and get another tackle in the draft. I think you have to. Yes. But you have to address center badly. And then they're going to need a wide receiver, man. They just are. I like what Pearsall showed lately. I like Howing's promise, but Ayuk might not be ready. They need another vet receiver to help. Is it somebody like Amari Cooper? I don't know. Somebody
especially if they're moving on from Debo as well.
Right.
And we think they might be.
I think they might be too. I think that they just have to take such a hard look in the mirror and just say, okay, we need to bite the bullet. And maybe some of these guys like Debo, who's a Shanahan guy, and Kyle loves me, we need to look somewhere else. So there's a lot of needs on this team. I don't even think it's something they can do in one off season, which is a little bit scary to me.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, again, they go into this offseason rolling over quite a bit of cap space. I think they have effectively over 50 million in cap space. Whatever, if they do sign Purdy to an extension, which all indications point that they will, even if it's a big money extension, it doesn't necessarily affect their cap next year. So they have quite a bit to play with, and they're very adept at the shell game that is the NFL salary cap. And they've got 11 picks in the upcoming draft. And I think one of the things I read today was that if the Vikings do end up signing Darnold to a long-term extension after this season, it could affect the 49ers compensatory pick that they would receive for him signing with the Vikings. Right now it's a 7th round pick. And depending on the contract, it could go up all the way up to a 4th, which would be huge. So you're right. I don't think they can do it in an off season, but I also think that they could get a lot done this off season, to the point where, again, going into next season with a 4th place schedule, currently they have, as it stands right now, they have the weakest strength of schedule in 2025. Again, that's all based on how teams finish this year. Obviously, that's not a great indication because, a team that went 4-13 this year could go 9-8 next year, right? And they're a much better team than they were this year. And if the 40, so I don't buy into strength of schedule, but you're playing a 4th place schedule, which is advantageous. If they pull the right levers this offseason, I see no reason why they can't be not just competitive, but again, eyeing a Super Bowl next year. But it's a big if they pull the right levers, because over the past handful of off seasons, I don't necessarily feel like they have. So that's really the big question for me is, can they pull the right levers? And it starts with the coordinator hires. And if they don't pull the right levers there, then I don't necessarily have a whole lot of faith that they're pulling right levers other places as well.
And they have to change their draft approach. Their draft approach, I feel like lately has kind of been like, well, we need a receiver. Well, we need a kicker. Well, we need a safety. Well, let's grab a running back here. Well, let's have a luxury pick here. They need to go back and draft in the trenches. They need to get better they need to get tougher. They need to get faster. And the team as a whole needs to get younger. There's just a lot of work to do here. And I agree with you. The schedule looks easy next year. And if everybody comes back healthy on offense, and again, they're going to be older. Some of these guys are going to be older. But if everybody comes back healthy, there's no reason based on that they can't improve from this year and maybe fight for a playoff spot. But in terms of the team being a Super Bowl contender, unless they hit home runs on things, there's going to be a lot of turnover on this roster, and there needs to be. They need to hit home runs on things. I don't know, man. I kind of think that ship's maybe sailed a little bit. Purdy has to have a better season if he's going to get this big contract. It looks like he has to not throw back-breaking interceptions. Again, maybe he had a hurt shoulder. I think he did, but that can't happen next season as well. There's a lot with this team, man. And it's one of those situations where kind of saw it coming over the past couple of years when you just say, okay, what happens when this guy's gone? And what happens when that guy's gone? And there's really nobody to replace this guy. And when that happens and you're not bringing in talent and you don't have guys to replace them, and that's not the easiest thing to do. Teams don't stay good for 30 years. It's not like, oh, we just replaced everybody. It's that easy. It's not. So, but that's where the Niners are, man. They're at a crossroads, and they can end up in a situation where, sure, they back to a playoff team, or they can end up being 6 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins for that. I can see that happening too if they don't make some of the right moves here.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you just look at the 16 teams that did make it. Sorry, not the 16, the 14 teams that did make it. You can kind of see a theme among them. And that theme is a good to great offensive line and a competent defense, right? Some of them have really good defenses, right? But for the most part, these teams are built through the lines. And you talk about how teams can't be good for 30 plus years. One of the reasons why the Chiefs continue to win outside of Patrick Mahomes is because they do prioritize the offensive line in front of him. And they play games with the tackles sometimes, but they seem to figure it out, right? But they invested in Joe Thuney. They invested in Creed Humphrey. They invested in, Smith. I can't remember his first name, right? The interior of the line. They kicked Thuney out to left tackle, solved all their problems, right? Which not good for them. Screw them. But you look at Tampa Bay, right? One of the reasons Tampa Bay's offense was as good as it was because they have a dominant offensive line. The Vikings, one of the reasons why Sam Darnold was so good is because they had a great offensive line. The Detroit Lions are who they are because they are built through their lines, right? So that's my hope, is that they take a look in the mirror and go, this is what we came in saying. We want to build through the lines. We want to build through the defensive line, right? And then we got away from that. And again, if it's because Chris Forster says, take the luxury picks, I can coach up, 4th, 5th rounders. Well, you can't. You've shown that you can't, because this offensive line hasn't been good. So please stop listening to Forster and actually invest in the offensive line, invest in center, invest in another left guard, find a replacement for Trent Williams, and then, find a running mate for Nick Bosa, replenish that interior defensive line. And I think those moves in and of themselves, just those moves, along with new coordinators on defense and special teams, I think puts this team back on the right track. And I think you can do that. I think you could do that in one offseason. I think you can do that through the draft. I think you can do that with strategic signings in free agency. And so again, it can be done. Whether it will be done, I don't know. But again, my hope for the offseason is going to be wholly dependent upon news coming out soon about coordinator changes and coordinator hires. If those don't happen, right, then I'm like, well, then there's no reason for me to even think about this team competing next year.
Yeah, agree. It's going to be a very, very eventful offseason. The team's at a crossroads. And again, what they do now, it's, I don't think it's being dramatic. It's going to affect the next 3 or 4 years, whether this team is going to, whether this team is going to get back to being a perennial playoff team, Super Bowl contender, and whether we're going to have a new regime in 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't work out, if there's another couple of years like this one, 10 years anyway for people is kind of like, coach has been there a decade. That's kind of like, oh, they've been there 10 years. And
I mean, look, there are Steelers fans that are like, well, I'm kind of done with Mike Tomlin, right? It's you guys haven't had a losing season the entire time he's been there. Yeah. You've never had a losing season.
He's not winning playoff games, and he doesn't have a quarterback. He hasn't had a quarterback in a decade. Yeah. So it's, he hasn't won, and fan bases get, maybe it's just time. It's one of those things. And I think we're closer to that than I thought we were certainly a year ago with this regime. So, but a lot of it they did
6
themselves.
11 will do that.
Yeah, it will. So, all right, man. You got anything else, Bri?
No. Like I said, just waiting to hear word that that the coordinators were fired. So, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Obviously,
right,
you know, I'm not trying to be an asshole. Nick Sorensen and Brian Schneider are people, and they're going to lose their jobs. But I mean, it is the nature of the business. So
yeah,
that's my hope. But we will see.
It's time to move on. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. For Brian, I'm Al.
Later.
9 on 3. 1, 2, 3.
.2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.
What's better than watching your team win? Winning money while you do it. I'm Jim Costa, and on Cash the Ticket, Mike Valeni and I give you the edge to make every game playable. College football, NFL, we're breaking it all down game by game. Your podcast feed is going to be filled, and you're going to love it. You can click on the games you care about. We do it all. With our analysis, we're finding games that other people aren't talking about. We're turning every Saturday and every Sunday into days where you got a chance to win. Don't just sit on the sidelines. Cash the Ticket with us. Follow Cash the Ticket in the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.